Morning. Thank you very much, IT lady, voice from above. Welcome to the DCTA Board of Directors regular meeting, September 24th, 2025. It is 10:02 a.m. and we do have a quorum. I want to thank you all for being here today. And first up on the agenda is our invocation. I'm going to ask Mr. Jody Gonzalez if he would do that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please join me in prayer. Father God, thank you for this glorious day. Thank you so much for this rain and the opportunity to just live and worship for you, Lord. And thank you for bringing us together as a board to do what we can to better the transit and transportation of your people, Lord, throughout our county and our region. Thank you so much for all the blessings that you provide to us, and thank you so much for all the grace that you give us to be your stewards and do your work, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Paul, would you mind?
Please say it. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. On Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right, with that, Mr. Christina, do we have any introductions?
No, sir. Thank you.
And Keisha, do we have any public comment? Easy peasy. Item 1 is consent agenda, and there's quite a bit on the consent agenda. I'll let the board take a moment. I would like to pull item 8 just briefly for a conversation, not because I have any particular issues, but I did want to renew some thoughts and make sure people understood what was going on with that contract. So any others? If there are no others to be pulled, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding item 8.
I move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item 8.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We'll go ahead and we'll just do item 8, which was the master agreement there with our friends at VIA. What I wanted to ask Paul was if I wanted to talk a little bit about the KPIs that we have built into the system at this point between the Denton area versus the Louisville Highland Village area, just so everybody's clear that there are differentiators in the contract currently for those two regions. And if you kind of give us the detail there.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to pass around a document that is listed as Addendum 1. It's an excerpt from the contract that we just recently signed with via River North Transportation, following the board's direction to do so in April. This addendum demonstrates zone-specific service level agreement metrics for the two KPIs that we use to monitor the performance of the service: wait time, which is measured in minutes, and seat unavailability, which is measured in a percentage of all ride requests. Under the first iteration of the contract, there was one service level agreement that said the level of service we could expect with regard to wait time and seat unavailability was driven by the total demand or total ride requests on the system. And the higher the ride requests, the further wait times would be pushed and the further seat unavailability would be pushed. Through conversation with VIA over the course of the first term of our contract, through conversation with this board over the first term of the contract, as we sought to optimize the network between fixed route and microtransit in Denton, and then finally made the decision to do that last summer with the intermediate service plan. As we tried to push that differentiation in performance to favor Louisville Highland Village because there is no fixed route service there, what we found was day to day the service tended to continue keeping the status quo. So we began the conversation with VIA while we were negotiating the final agreement to differentiate the two zones and provide some equity between the cities based on the lack of fixed route service in Louisville and Highland Village. And that's how this sheet was born. So what's happened since, if you look at in the board packet, I don't have an extra copy of that, but in the board packet, we always publish our safety, service, and ridership metrics. what you see is that it was even between the zones, and then sometimes Denton zone was very, very close. It was about the April timeframe where we really put a stake in the ground and said we want to drive these differentiators, and began the conversation about these service level agreements. And VIA, to their credit, has made the changes in the service design in order to drive that. So the results have been, we turned the corner really in May of 2025 with a 1.3% differentiation in favor of the Louisville Highland Village zone. And we set a target of about 4% differentiation on seat unavailability. So then in June, we achieved 4.7. In July, we achieved 4.3. In August, we achieved 4.0, keeping in mind that as you get into the August timeframe and the demand in Denton increases because of UNT, we might expect that to happen, but we kept that 4% differentiation. On the wait times, what you see is a pretty steady 2-minute favorability between Denton and Louisville Highland Village, and we've been able to maintain that while also maintaining our 24-minute wait time, even in Denton, as demand increased on the service, as it always does in the fall timeframe. So long story short is, this table is the means by which we provide that differentiation. It can fluctuate based on demand, but we're trying to, we may not be able to respond to every differentiation in service demand from a month-to-month basis, but we need to look at trends over time so as not to confuse the public and not to confuse ourselves over what they should be expecting. That's why overall we just have marked the one KPI for seat unavailability and wait time, and then we're going to know, because of this conversation and these SLAs, that we should be seeing a 4% and 2-minute differential between the zones. The addendum in the contract says that if we request this change in service parameters, like further implementation of the intermediate service plan as we're contemplating for next summer, because we're looking at 2 additional fixed routes, that will change substantively the service mix and how GoZone is deployed across the zones, we would expect. That could drive a change in how these service level agreements, the service level agreement is laid out, but we would still try to target the differentiation that we have today. If the board has expectations about what that differentiation should be in order to achieve some sort of equity, we welcome that feedback so that we can respond accordingly. We can have that conversation as we go through the intermediate service plan discussion, which I expect will start in the next couple of months, as we've already started looking at what are these new routes that we may be bringing to Denton to move people most cost effectively.
And my thought process on this one is, as we adjust and add to the bus route system, we'll of course have the opportunity to move the levers with that capacity, shifting some of it, moving some of that maybe just to the bottom line, however we want to do that. But that also would play into, do we want to create more separation in these KPIs? So I wanted to have that conversation because it got lost for me a little bit, and I wanted to make sure that we understood that we were moving both systems to be more what each municipality wants to see. So there are other questions. Be happy to have Paul take them.
I think the main takeaway is we've proven over the course of the last year that the modal optimization concept works. I can show you the year-end numbers of how we're looking 11 months into the year. So that's number one. And number two, the fact is that we can work with VIA to drive differentiation between zones. And so with that, it's just a matter of what is the expectation, and let us see how we can meet that. Or recognizing that the farther you push those limits, you begin operating on the razor's edge and you have the opportunity to not be meeting expectations. So we just got to balance all that.
I think the other question I would have in this is, we've got ETA wait time and then seat unavailability. Are there other KPIs, or are those the easiest ones to measure?
Those are the ones that we have been measuring.
Okay.
In terms of other things that we can measure, we can certainly brainstorm about that.
I don't even know if there is one, so I'm just.
The reason these are there is because those are the ones that are most visible to the customer.
That's the wait time and the not getting it, not getting it.
Right. In order to make sure that those wait times are being achieved, we do monitor how many ride requests we get a month by zone, how many service hours are deployed by zone, so that we can, if we start to see that we're not meeting KPIs, we can more easily detect why that is. But ultimately, the customer really cares about how long does it take to get the ride, and is the ride available?
Yes.
So just, I appreciate this, because I do think it's important to have the differentiation between the two, because we do have, they are two separate zones that operate very differently. So with my only input this point in time would be, since in Denton, we have, 20-minute routes, right? So, I don't know about the spread, but I would like for the goal in Louisville to be that our max wait time would be 20 minutes.
Okay. And we can certainly look at what it would take to do that. And if and the answer is we can meet that if we have additional service hours, then the board can either direct the deployment of those additional service hours, or when we do the intermediate service plan phase 3, ideally this coming summer, you would know that when you shift that stuff, that capacity to the south, that's what can be what lets you achieve that.
Right. I also understand we're talking about, adding some routes or expanding some routes. And so there may be some additional geofencing, and so there may be some additional hours that are freed up to maybe just get us to that 20-minute. But I do think that, kind of in all fairness, it would be appropriate to have the max wait time in Louisville be 20 minutes, since we don't have a bus system.
And that's heard and understood. In the budget for Go Zone this coming year, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but we are issuing a baseline number of service hours to serve the status quo as it exists today. There's a certain number of hours per week that are in the budget but held in reserve, because remember when we did ISP phase 1, we said if KPI, we don't know what's going to happen. So if KPIs get wonky, we need to be able to call in reserve forces. We've not used that up to today. Saved $600,000 last year. It's in the budget for this coming year. If you all gave the direction before the summertime that you wanted to achieve 20 minutes, and that's what it took. So we'll go back and ask the question, what does it take to get to 20 minutes? If the answer is more capacity, then we can give you that option before the summer.
Great.
Make sense?
If there's no other conversation on 8, we need to approve it.
Yes, sir.
So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll offer a motion we approve.
I have a motion on second.
Second?
All right, I have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Did have one question for Javier on the Royale app. What are we doing to promote that, to get people? I mean, because that's kind of a head-in unit is what we're kind of talking about, right? Since it has so much reach.
It is. I know that our marketing team actually recently started making a few posts about the Transit app today. So moving forward, we're really closely engaged with the team at Transit. They've got a marketing team as well. We actually met with them at APTA, discussed, what we could work on together to promote the app. There's a fair amount of marketing material that they've provided us, and we'll keep working with them to keep promoting the app on social media, LinkedIn, so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You got it.
Go ahead and move on to the regular agenda. Item 1, discuss and consider fiscal year 2026 election of board officers. This is an action item. I know that the board, our charter basically allows up to 3 years. I don't have a need necessarily to be there 3 years. 2 years seems to have been a decent cycle there. I would like to see if we could do a board that is Judge Eads. He had expressed interest in being the chair this next year. Cesar has expressed some interest of rolling off the board. And I know there's some uncertainty on the Denton seat.
Rolling off the officers.
Yeah, sorry, rolling off the officers. No, I still want you here, Cesar. I want you here. Sorry about that, but rolling off the officers list. I know with the uncertainty, I think we're gonna have a new seat.
Yes, yeah,
From
I'm
Denton.
not seeking reappointment
So-
this year.
Okay, and we will miss you. You've been a great voice for your community, and you've really been a great advocate for transit. So we really appreciate your time here and your input. But I would like to see Highland Village get rolled onto the secretary position, and then work the way through there if that works for everybody. So I'm recommending Judge Eads as chair, myself as vice chair for the year, and Dan Jaworski as secretary. So I'll entertain a motion on that unless somebody has an argument. Or a discussion.
Need a second?
I need,
If that's your motion, I'll second that. Okay.
we can do that. Any other discussion or comments? If none, I'll entertain a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Good. Dan, we need a secretary today. So I'll need you to sign some stuff. Keisha's got you set up for that, but thank you everyone for putting in the extra time on the board and I mean, the small board, small but mighty, we get a lot done. So I really appreciate the time I've had. Look forward to seeing.
Well,
what
thank,
Judge
and
Eads
thank
does.
you, Mr. Chairman, for your dedication, 2 years of service and serving us, so, nationwide, statewide and region-wide.
Yeah.
You've done an excellent job. We appreciate it.
We're doing the work. I mean, the staff has set us up for success and I think we're punching way above our weight as far as what we do as an agency. So I'm really pleased with that. So we still have lots to figure out, but it's one of those things that's always improving. So it's a good thing. All right. Next up, item 2, discuss and consider approval of task order number 2 with Lochner in the amount not to exceed 4.5 million for preliminary engineering for the A-train extension to downtown Carrollton and schematic design for 15-minute headway improvements. This is an action item and Austin Frith will be presenting.
Mr. Chairman, just by way of point of
And,
order,
it's a
we'd like
2
to
and 3.
open item 3.
So let's open 3 as well, which is discuss and consider approval of task order 4 with Lochner, an amount not to exceed 600,000 for A-train service hours expansion and positive train control analysis. All
Thank
yours.
you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Today, we're excited to bring forward these 2 agenda items for your consideration and approval. The agenda item number 2 is the recommendation of approval of task order number 2 with Lochner, an amount not to exceed 4.5 million for preliminary engineering for the A-train extension to downtown Carrollton and schematic design for 15-minute headway improvements. And agenda item number 3 is the recommendation of approval task order number 4 with HW Lochner, an amount not to exceed $600,000 for A-train service hours expansion and positive train control analysis. So just as a quick overview of our program vision for the A-train, we've seen this slide before, but this is really at the core of our enhancement program. We want to look at the performance, efficiency, and regional connectivity of the A-train. And part of that is the elements of the schedule and frequency improvements. It's the planning and development for the station at downtown Carrollton and the Corinth station, looking at opportunities there in that area as well. Also seen this one too before. This is our decision flow chart of major impacts and major decisions along the way. Last month, you all approved the design and construction for curb and speed upgrades for the A-train, and that pre-construction is ongoing right now. The next green boxes are going to be the major decision points today with 15-minute headway improvements, schematic design, and the 15-minute headways, and then the downtown Carrollton preliminary engineering. With that, we also have the service hours decision that needs to be made as far as increasing service hours on our current schedule, and then what that means to our PTC investment. This slide just summarizes what the design to support delivery means, and what the benefits of advancing design today mean. So it allows us to identify environmental right of way and utility risk early. Meeting minimum design requirements is critical for federal funding. So when we go out to funding, we have to meet a minimum design requirement for that. We also are looking at regional funding through STIP, TIP, and discretionary programs through NCT COG. We also want to look at the reliable estimates that will be coming through that design. So better cost estimates will allow us to better plan for our long range financial plan. And then it also allows us to accelerate procurement and construction across all delivery methods. Whichever delivery method we choose, this allows us to get ahead of that. This slide shows us 3 primary delivery methods available to us: design, bid, build, construction, manager at risk, and then progressive design build. We've grayed out the top one. I think that's we've agreed that that's not a preferred method. based on the timing and sequencing of that. CMAR and PDB are kind of what we're looking forward to. And what you'll see is here, we're here starting preliminary design. We're hoping by the springtime, we'll have enough design to get to a decision point with delivery method. So that'll be coming in front of you all with pros and cons for each, depending on where the design's landing at that point. We'll be able to share some information and hopefully get to a preferred method of delivery. Here's our upcoming contract slide. So what you see in the gray is essentially what we approved last month with the Rio Grande Pacific authorization letter for curve and speed, and then the Lochner support task order to support that construction. The green boxes are what's in front of us today. Again, the downtown Carrollton design and the expanded service hours analysis. And then task order 5 is what we're anticipating with the Corinth station study based on their feedback to us. That's proceeded to go in front of their council here in the coming months. So we're targeting a December, January board approval for that task order. Overall schedule here, as I mentioned, curve and speed is in pre-construction currently. Task order 2 will hopefully start here shortly with downtown Carrollton 15-minute headway. And then as you can see, we do some funding analysis depending on where we land with the delivery method. Those will go their appropriate tracks. And then service hour expansion and PTC analysis also will be kicking off, and we'll have some discussion around that hopefully in the springtime. And then as you see on the very bottom, Station at Corinth, kind of taking its own path dependent on city involvement and feedback. So this slide shows how advancing design strengthens our ability to compete for funding at every level. So right now in September 2025, we have rough order of magnitude estimates for downtown Carrollton and 15-minute headways, but no estimate yet for service hours. By February of 26, as I mentioned, those will advance to ROM and programmatic estimates, giving a much clearer picture for funding discussions with local and regional partners like NCT COG. By summer of 26, we'll be at the programmatic and construction working estimate stage. And at that point, we're ready for an alternative delivery method discussion and initiation of federal SIG funding discussions. So the key takeaway here is really just that moving each design element forward allows us to move, allows our agency to move up the ladder of certainty on the level of estimate that we're developing. So the more design you get further down the road, the higher certainty you have on that estimate, which aligns better for funding applications.
And Austin, if I could just underline something here, that February 2026 target is primarily towards getting a number in front of the RTC that has a reasonable level of certainty to get us to downtown Carrollton with an expanded service hours infrastructure if it's determined that additional track is needed. The federal component of that part of that project is only if necessary. And we're definitely thinking there's a federal component, a capital investment grant component, potentially on the 15-minute headways or discretionary grants. But we're trying to get downtown Carrollton extension done with local funding.
This slide we presented, I believe, back in November of 23. This just shows some of the challenges that we have ahead of us with the DG&O freight opportunities and constraints. So what you see here is within the Louisville corridor, there's certain DG&O customers that they have to serve in these time windows on the schedule between 10:45 and 4 a.m. Also, when we talk about Carrollton extension, we have a similar constraint on Monday and Wednesday at a minimum from 5 to 10 p.m. That has the potential to go to 5 days a week. And they do have some needs there for their customers as well. So what you see on the bottom right hand is kind of our scheduled chart of where we may have conflicts when we introduce downtown Carrollton. And then when we talk about extending service hours in the Louisville area, there will be some schedule conflicts that we'll have to work through. So the two major challenges also what we want to bring to your attention today. We've got lease rights and PTC, as I mentioned before. First off, we don't have lease rights yet to operate into downtown Carrollton. So what we're doing right now is internally, we're having discussions with our current ILA that we have with DART. So those discussions and that investigation has started to see what that would mean to add that corridor to our lease. So that's a good thing. We've made notification of it and we're investigating it right now. And then also the design scope assumes extending our existing PTC system. That currently isn't the same PTC system as DART and DGNO operate on. So part of what task force is going to do is look into that, do some analysis and look at what that system choice should be and come up with a recommendation for you all to investigate with what PTC we should move forward with as we move this program on. Next, I've got a couple slides just on the complexities with this design for the A-train corridor, both 15-minute and the downtown Carrollton. So on the 15-minute, just a snapshot of the DTTC extension. We've got quite a bit of challenges with culverts. We've got a bridge in there that may have to get reinforced. We've got sound walls that may have to be extended. And we've got some major drainage challenges ahead of us. So this just shows you a snapshot of just one part of the corridor that may be challenging for us when it comes to design. And then when we talk about downtown Carrollton, similar issue, this corridor is highly urbanized now. It's got a mix of industrial and commercial residential. So we've got quite a bit of things happening all in a short 2.2 mile corridor. We've got Hutton Bridge that may have to get reinforced. We've got some water lines, drainage lines that will have to be analyzed and potentially upgraded. So again, this is just a snapshot of one part of the corridor that's driving some of the design effort. This is the slide that shows essentially the quiet zone that will have some complexity to it. So we've got nine crossings that of those 9, 6 of them have identified that they will require what we call quad gates. And that's the image on the bottom left. So these quad gates are pretty expensive to implement and design. So there's signaling and infrastructure that has to go in to get these operating. So when we talk about driving costs and driving design, this is an element that we have to pay attention to. We have had initial discussions with the city of Carrollton to see if there's any opportunities to close these. I think we're probably looking at maybe 1, maybe 2 of these that could be closed that we wouldn't have to do quad gates for, but they may require additional road work to get around that crossing. So more to come on this, but this is another element that we'll be focused on in design. So this slide breaks down the scope for the work of downtown Carrollton preliminary engineering and the 15-minute headway schematic design. For downtown Carrollton, we're advancing the 2.2 mile extension design covering civil and track design, utilities and drainage. Surveying includes LiDAR, topographic mapping, geotech borings, lab testing, while environmental work provides full category exclusion documentation with FRA and FTA coordination. On risk and cost, this effort develops the Class 4 construction cost estimate and risk register tied to bridges, floodplains, and stations. For the 15-minute frequency piece, schematic layouts would define siting and signal concepts, desktop surveys, and environmental reviews to flag potential constraints. This work informs our delivery method, enables pursuit of those federal and local grants, and positions us for future. And then when we talk about the cost drivers within downtown Carrollton 15-minute headway schematic design, for downtown Carrollton, costs are shaped by the tight urban environment that we just talked about. There's an area of dense utilities, bridges, and as well as a brand new station tying into the dark green line. Utility conflicts are particularly challenging downtown where water, sewer, and telecom lines are heavily concentrated. For the 15-minute headways, drivers are broader corridor impacts like added drainage and floodplain mitigation, as well as additional bridge infrastructure improvements, crossovers, and upgraded signaling. Together, these projects require multiple disciplines at once, extensive FTA and FRA documentation, and heavy program management to ensure cost and schedule control. This table shows some of the exclusions that we've documented in the scope. So this is essentially what's not included in the scope and why those items are considered low risk at this stage. Operating rights and agreements aren't included. We discussed that a little bit. We don't have the rights yet to operate to downtown Carrollton, but negotiations are with DART and DG&O will start here shortly. Freight and passenger overlap isn't in scope either, but operations are stable and predictable, and future analysis is programmed for that. On the PTC side, this task assumes continuing with the current system that we have. The upgrade decision, as discussed, including IETMS, will be addressed through task order 4. Funding and construction are not part of this scope. This is strictly design, but early estimates are enough to support funding pursuit. Environmental and regulatory approvals assume a categorical exclusion. We don't expect major impacts, so higher level reviews aren't likely needed at this point. And then finally, other items like utility relocations, fleet expansions, and third-party permits are deferred. These tasks can be managed later in the detail of the design. When we look at hours and level of effort by discipline for this task, both in staff hours and in the number of design sheets, you'll see here. On the hours, you can see downtown Carrollton requires heavy surveying, track civil design, drainage, utilities, and systems work. This is reflective of the complexity of the urban extension that we're talking about. 15-minute headways require significant effort in drainage, utilities, and signaling. Surveying is being used or issued today as a hourly not to exceed task since it's highly dependent on field conditions and potential flagging efforts with close coordination with DART and DG&O. On the design sheets, downtown Carrollton generates the most sheets, particularly in systems and civil design, where the 15-minute headway adds a large number of sheets in track drainage and systems. Geotech and environmental tasks aren't shown here since those produce reports that will feed the design. And really the key takeaway here is both projects represent a significant design effort to move forward. Carrollton with the complex urban environment, and then the 15-minute headway with the overall corridor system impacts. So moving towards task order 4, just a brief summary on this. This is going to focus on 2 major efforts: extending the A-train service hours into late night and analyzing the PTC positive train control interoperability with DG&O freight. The scope also evaluates how higher frequency with 15-minute headways interacts with downtown Carrollton. This matters because it ensures compliance with FRA rules, prevents conflict with freight dispatch, and maintains overall system safety. It also answers a key question: can our current PTC system support future growth, or will we need to engage in upgrading or dual equipment DG&O? The outcome of this will include a recommendation on system strategy, operational model for expanded hours and frequency, and a comparative cost risk analysis to guide funding pursuit. So this will deliver a phased roadmap so the board can make an informed decision on how we move forward. So when we talk about the 2 major pieces of this task order 4, the PTC and operational impact. So task A on the PTC side will look at whether our current PTC system can handle expanded hours, or if we need to upgrade and dual equip or dual equip with the IETMS that DART and DG&O operate on. Task B will evaluate whether expanded service, including late night hours, 15-minute headways, and the Carrollton extension can reliably operate with current infrastructure and crews. And then from a regulatory standpoint, task A will ensure FRA compliance, while task B provides defensible assumptions to strengthen funding. So this analysis will include detailed system reviews, vendor coordination, and alternatives comparison. Partnerships span across FRA, DG&O, the WABTech PTC team, and DCTA board for task A, while Task B will include DCT operations planning, DART, DG&O. The final outputs will be comprised of technical memos, cost risk matrices, impact models, and scenario comparisons, all feeding into a phased board decision-making tool. And then finally, here's the breakdown essentially on the hours and focus of the skill set that we're going to be working towards on this task order. Within on the PTC side, engineers must test scenarios for dual equipping versus upgrade strategies, which is highly technical and labor intensive. On the stakeholder and regulatory coordination side, we've allotted time here for coordination with FRA, DG&O, and DART. These conversations will be critical to ensure our models align with real world operating constraints. On the project management and QA/QC side, we've dedicated hours for project oversight, document control, and quality assurance. Because of this output of this work directly feeds board decisions and funding applications, QA/QC is emphasized on this task. And then finally, smaller but important share of hours go to cost and risk analysis. This ensures scenarios we present to you are not only technically sound, but also financially defensible. That's the summary on task order 2 and 4. You happy to answer questions?
I have a question, Paul. I do understand that we have not started formal negotiations with DART to have leasing rights, but we've, over the years, have talked about this, right? So this is not completely out of left field. Conversation's never been had.
We see one another at all sorts of regional events and had breakfast on Monday morning on a different topic. And it's well known that this conversation is upon us. And
Okay.
so what this will allow us to do is bring DART to the table at the same time as DG&O, at the same time as the city of Carrollton and us to get sorted out all the details that Austin just laid out there. There's a significant number of coordination things that have to happen, whether it's PTC, lease rights, how many streets are we going to close, where's the quiet zone going to look like, all that sort of stuff. And they're all tied together. So we've baked it or boiled it to the point that we can. And now this gives us a chance to kick it off formally. So
Just wanted to make sure that everybody who may be watching understands that we're not looking at authorizing a task for $4.5 million without having any discussions with DART at all.
that's correct.
About being able to operate there.
That's correct. We have a great relationship with our partners at DART and the NCT COG. And this is a conversation that's been ongoing for the last couple of years as we've been heading down this path. First with the initial feasibility studies to now get us to this point. Thank you for that.
Questions? What level of design are we going to end up with for both of these?
So on the downtown Carrollton extension, we're going to get a preliminary engineering. We've kind of gone back and forth with what percent that really is, but it's going to get us, I mean, I think for the SIG grant, we have to have around a 30% level. So that's what we're thinking. We don't want to put a percent on here, but I think that's fair. Around that percentage is probably what we're looking for. And then on the task order or the 15-minute headway, we're going to get a schematic design. This isn't going to be as far as the preliminary engineering, but far enough where we can get a refined cost estimate from what we have today. What we have today is very high level based on a desktop review. So this is going to advance that to get us a little bit better number.
Yeah, if I could, can you go back please to slide 22 first? From our initial conversations with the board on design effort and level of design, we've been intentional to stay away from 30%, 15%, whatever it is, because ultimately what we want to talk about what we're trying to accomplish. With this design work, we're trying to give the board the ability to make a decision about what's the right delivery method and do it in such a way that gives us cost certainty. And that's if you go now to slide 25, that we've eliminated as much risk as we can before we get into the place of we're risking doing throwaway work, because if we hired a CM at risk builder, they would want to undo something. And It's not a precise science. Different people have different ideas about what's a 20% design, what's a 30% design, all that sort of stuff. So we've just worked really closely with Lochner and in order to come up with, hit the sweet spot on what's the right level of design. I think this graphic is really helpful to show how we're progressing from rough order of magnitude to program estimates to get an initial funding request, and then ultimately to a current working estimate on the downtown Carrollton piece, at least, that lets an alternative delivery provider come in and give us a good starting point.
All right, any other questions? There are none. Need a motion on these.
Thank you both. We approve the two items, task order. Let me start by taking them one at a time. I'll recommend that we approve task order number 2, Lochner. The amount not to exceed $4.5 million for preliminary engineering for the A train to downtown Carrollton and schematic design for 15-minute sign headway.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now, this has nothing to do with Corinth, right? There is no conversation on Corinth in this second.
That is correct, sir. If you can, Austin, go back to, I forget what slide you have that shows where the one with all the columns and what are the task orders that are outstanding, that one. So this has nothing to do with Corinth.
Yep.
That's a completely separate decision based on the city of Corinth's action and this board's decisions about how they want to engage in that. The task order number 5 that's listed there was submitted to the city of Corinth for their consideration. And I understand by conversations with their staff that their council will be getting that for approval in the very near future. When that gets executed, then it will come to this board for authorization to proceed, and then that work would get underway. But that gets merged into the flow of work that Austin's laid out if and when that decision is made.
Super. Thank you.
If I could, I'd like to make a motion on item number 3, recommended staff approve task order 4 with Lochner in the amount not to exceed $600,000 for the A train service hours expansion and positive train control minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a motion to second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, board. Thank you. Item 4, discuss update on Tyler Technologies ERP implementation. This is a discussion item. We have Jackie Bronson and Keisha Williams.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. We are here to give you an update on the Tyler Technologies ERP implementation. This is a discussion item, so no action is required today. This is a chart here that y'all should be familiar with. We've shown it a few times, shows all of the phases and the modules that we have covered under the current Tyler contract. And you can see some highlights here where we're complete on some of these, where we're showing us in progress, and then some that are paused, which we'll speak to. But I'd like to invite Lakeisha to give you guys a brief update on the finance portion, phase 1.
Good morning, everyone. So about 1.5 years ago, we started with the ERP implementing the new Tyler software Munis system. And it was comprised of 3 phases. Phase 1 being the financials, phase 2 and 3 are for HR. And as Jackie previously said on the slide prior to this one, majority of phase 1 has been completed. We have a few items that are currently a work in progress. We have some training sessions that are currently going on as we speak. And so our go live was April 1st. And with the go live, we brought modules to live. Everything is working as it should. We did some testing. We made sure everything came over accurately. As you can see on the chart for our milestone overview, we are at 100%. We do have 99% for production, which includes a small component, which is our annual 1099, which takes place in January. So again, we are currently working on that as well. We have our year-end process that is coming up beginning October 1st. We have training sessions for that to be able to close out fiscal year 25 and open up fiscal year 26. And I have already mentioned our annual 1099 will take place in January, as well as we have the Historical Archive Database project going on, which is the HADB, where we are taking our legacy information from SunGard, and we have Coa Hills, we're working with them closely to bring this information into a database where we can manage it ourselves and take it forward while we use Tyler Munis. And with that database, we are currently in the validation phase of the database. We have received our logins, our passwords, and everybody, the team that will be validating has gained access. So we anticipate to have our validation process completed within the next couple of weeks so we can meet up with Coa Hills, give them our findings if we need anything adjusted, if there's additional information we may be missing, and they can be able to have enough time to get us the data that we need. So does anyone have any questions on phase 1 update? Okay, thank you. I'll let Jackie take it over to go ahead with phase 2.
Thank you, ma'am.
Excuse me.
All right, so all that good news that you heard Lakeisha share is what has us here at showing that phase 1 is about 90% complete. So that last 10% are things that are open, some training sessions, some year-end items, and part of what that is an inventory module in phase 1. That process has been paused due to some limitations in the service and an inability to build it for what is best for DCTA business, and a recommendation from the project manager there that without changing our business, they can't move forward. Similarly, you'll see that phase 2 is paused right now. Phase 2 was the build of payroll. So I would say approximately 90% of the time that we've spent on this in sessions has been dedicated purely to payroll. You'll note as part of those sessions, you'll see that year to date, phase 2 has spent a little over $249,000. So what we've been able to accomplish in this time is a true evaluation of our processes, a needs and a gap analysis that has highlighted a lot of things that we could do better, should do better, and items that we've escalated through Tyler leadership, but ultimately have learned that Tyler doesn't have the ability to meet us where we are on a lot of those things. And so we've lost functionality in things like processing payroll, managing employee data, an inability to move a workflow forward for performance management the way that we manage performance here at DCTA. So the current status of those sessions is also paused. So we're not currently in session, taking the time to really evaluate, understand our business, what can Tyler do, what can it not, what other options do we have available. Part of that analysis you'll see here is looking at where we would land. So when I talk about those needs and that gap analysis that we were able to look at through the time that we've spent in this build and in these sessions, I also identified for us a need that if we move forward with Tyler, we will either need to do a position upgrade or add an additional position to staff, in that there would be a need for somebody well-versed in processing, reporting and filing quarterly and year-end taxes, preparing year-end tax documents for employees and the like, where we currently receive all of that in a payroll as a service model that we have now with UKG. So overview here of implementation costs. Continuing this project with Tyler shows us somewhere between $631,000 to just over $1 million in additional costs. And then there's some side-by-side comparison here of what those annual costs would be between the two systems that we have. We do have an opportunity, as we've gone back and look at what are some of these things we identified in the needs and the gaps. What are things that we could make better? Where do we need to optimize? One of those things being getting the entire agency on one payroll process. So we've done that in our current system. We just went live with that on September 1st. And we think we have an opportunity to make the needed improvements with the system that we have today. So barring any feedback from this board, our plan would be to hopefully come back to y'all next month on consent to look to reallocate $140,000 from this project to help us with these optimizations and upgrades, implementing some new items that UKG has available for us, and closing out the capital project here with a savings of about $1 million. And that is my update. Sure.
So the right column is, as lined up, that's, okay, that is 75,502. So phase two annual costs, 70, okay, so roughly the same, but our implementation cost is significantly more.
Yeah, and really the loss of functionality and the additional staffing needs
Right.
is captured in here as well.
So the, what, 240?
249, 912.
That's a sunk cost? There's nothing recoverable there? Was that
So
just the HR or was that HR and inventory?
that's HR and payroll. We've escalated some concerns through Tyler. Paul and I have met with Tyler leadership while Tyler has offered some remedy that doesn't come in any return. It does come in future additional free sessions if we move forward.
We move forward with HR?
If we move forward with everything with them.
If we don't, then it's a sunk cost. But if we move forward with them, we end up having to put more.
We do continue to spend, as of the last conversation we've had with their leadership, it's 5 sessions that they would provide us at no cost. Those are 8-hour days that are dedicated to the build of the system.
But we've already identified that that's a waste of time because they can't do.
The system can't do much of the things that we're asking it to.
Sorry about that. Turn that off to save the battery. Forgot to turn it back on. On the next slide, that's 600 to 1 million, 631 to 1,018,000. Is that inclusive of that 249?
Yes, that would be the total that
Okay,
we would spend
okay.
on this.
So. Even if we went down the road, we still have a $400,000 delta that we don't even know about as far as implementation of. If they could get us as close as possible.
Yeah, so they've attempted to try to get us as close as possible. We've seen 2 different project managers. We've seen about 5 different implementation consultants to attempt to change some builds and add some things and look at what the system can do. And ultimately, it can't do what we're asking.
Well, I have a question. So are these items things that they told us the system could do whenever we decided to go with this system?
I'm unfortunately not in a position to be able to answer that as I wasn't part of the selection committee. And so I don't think that there was an in-depth question on the payroll and HR functionality from what I understand.
I would answer that by saying the HR staff that was in place at the time that this selection was made is not the same as the HR staff that's here today. I'm confident that this was explored to the extent that the people in the room knew how much to explore it. And we acted on the best information that we had at the time. And unfortunately, had to get into the nitty gritty and working with the engineers to find that there's a difference between what the team understood at the outset and what the engineers could deliver.
Okay, I'm trying to understand, is this something that Tyler was telling us we could do? I mean, just backing up, I thought that one of the biggest benefits was that we were going to have both systems, the finance piece and the HR piece kind of all in the same system, and that there was going to be some benefits from having everything all in one place.
That-
So if we abandon the Tyler piece, I mean, I hate that we have the $250,000 sunken cost, but are we also losing out on some benefits from having everything under one umbrella?
I would say I don't think so. UKG works very well with Tyler. They have a very specific flat file meant to integrate into Tyler. So the things that Lakeisha is looking for to post journal entries and add on the books would come over in a flat file from payroll every 2 weeks that she can work with.
Okay.
the way that we process payroll today is serviceable. We've found through this process, the optimization and with the NTMC integration to get the entire agency on a single payroll. So we gained some efficiencies in that way through this whole process. And so any benefit of having a single unified system does not offset the loss of functionality on all the other human resources modules that become less effective.
I completely understand that. It bothers me a little bit that we had to get $250,000 into this effort to get to a point where, and so it does, I'm just trying to understand if there were promises made by Tyler that, it seems a little shady for them to make promises on things that they can deliver, and then we spend a bunch of money with them, and now all of a sudden they can't do it.
So as we go back based on, so the recommendation is that we proceed down this alternative path. If the board does not just object to that or disagree with it, then our next step is to go to Tyler and say, okay, how do we close this out? Jackie mentioned that they've given us credit for future sessions that are meaningless if we don't end up having any future sessions. I would point to the fact that we have a long-term relationship with this vendor through the payroll module that we have to work with. And so certainly we can have some conversation about what can this look like in terms of credits with regard to our long-term relationship. And then I will dig into the procurement files to understand what I can from the notes of the review process that we were under to see if there's things that we can point to say, we understood or were told this, and then this is what came.
Okay, that's fair.
Questions? This was a discussion item, so I think we'll see it back again for approval next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5, discuss update on fair system strategy study and fair policy development. We have Javier Trilla, our Vice President of Innovation and Information Technology, presenting. This is a discussion item.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Today I'll be presenting an update on a path forward on a fair system strategy, as well as development of a fair policy for the agency. This is a discussion item only and no board action is required, although your feedback is gladly accepted. So during the FY26 budget process, we presented several items related to fair technology, fair collection to the board for discussion and review. Based on board feedback, the need arose to take a deeper dive into our fair collection methods, such as cash collection, our mobile apps, and other fair technology that we use. And since fair technology and fair policy go hand in hand, and the fair policy was part of the long-range service plan this year anyways, we've opted to combine these two studies into one to also alleviate some duplicative efforts on some of the staff conversations and some of the conversations that we'll bring to you. So I'll kick this off by answering two whys. Why should we update our fair policy? It ensures fares remain fair and accessible across all income levels. It makes the system simpler for riders to understand and navigate. It keeps DCTA consistent with DART, Trinity Metro, and other regional partners, and also aligns with some of the goals outlined in Regional Transit 2.0. And it also lays a foundation for the adoption of next generation tools. Why should we update our fare payment systems? We have aging infrastructure. Some of the items that I brought to the board during the budget process were our ticket vending machines that are end of life. It'll also introduce new technologies such as account-based ticketing systems, open loop technology, such as tap to pay systems, as well as looking at our mobile payments and our other app framework. It offers more flexible payment options for our riders, for it meets the needs of different riders, and it creates seamless regional connectivity across our region. Ultimately, the study will provide a technology modernization roadmap, and it'll help us figure out how and when to transition to new modern fare technology. It'll provide us a policy framework to bring to the board for approval. And it'll also bring up a strategy that connects both fair policy and fair strategy, as fair policy does ultimately inform the technology that we choose. So within the scope of this program for both of these aspects for the fair policy development, we will start by looking at our fare structure, look at our different categories, the different fare types that we have out there, transfer rules between services, and then agreements with institutions such as our social service agencies, our employee pass programs, as well as our university partners. We'll take a look at equity programs, things like our reduced fare programs, as well as the ability to possibly engage in fare capping if that is something that will work out well for this agency. We'll look at alternative policy frameworks that we'll be able to bring to the board to make sure that we have long-term sustainability. We'll also be bringing in facilitate workshops with staff to make sure that we have and we look at our fair policy scenarios before making any final decisions. So we'll look at a few different possible options. And then we'll come up with a board-ready resolution that formalizes a preferred fare policy direction. On the fare system scope, we'll be looking at our current inventory and evaluate our existing fare collection assets and workflows. We'll be taking a look at, how much we collect from each different type of fare system, whether it be cash, mobile apps, or electronic systems. We'll benchmark ourselves against regional agencies as well as national peers to take a look and see where we need to modernize. We'll identify technology and process gaps that limit integration, flexibility, and fare enforcement. We'll look at future system requirements that'll then be defined to align with our policy goals. And ultimately, we'll prepare a high-level implementation roadmap that includes capital, O&M, and funding considerations. Any questions so far? So our preliminary cost from AECOM for this program is $215,000 for both the strategy and policy development portion of it. Deliverables we've touched on a little bit, but we'll include a fare systems and policy report, gap analysis matrix, roadmap moving forward, as well as a cost framework. Again, a board-ready fair policy resolution, and executive and board presentations that include touch points along the way of the process. The next steps that we're looking at here are finalizing the cost proposal for the board to bring to you next month for consideration. And then also aligning a timeline with AECOM that aligns with the FY27 budget cycle. It's important if we're going to look ahead to fair technology for the FY27 season, that we have this kind of wrapped up by the February, possibly March, early April timeframe, so that we can properly bring the right products to the board. So with that, this concludes my presentation.
Board, any questions?
Will this provide a gap analysis on potential estimated cost outcomes for future assets that will be needed for the fair policy?
So what it will provide is, again, the fair technology costs, as well as the O&M costs to maintain such a platform. It'll look ahead at, replacement costs over the years, staffing requirements to make sure that we keep these systems alive and well. So, and then probably also a roadmap on how often we need to look at our fair policy as well.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6, discuss local and regional updates and legislative updates. Chair. Oh. CEO, Paul, you got anything?
No, sure. I assume you'll talk about the transit subcommittee.
So there are two things going on in my world, our world, and transit. First is the Transit 2.0 subcommittee. We have representation, both Jill Jester from the city of Denton. She is heading up that subcommittee. I'm sitting there representing DCTA, and Judge Eads is there representing the county as well. So we've got good representation on this subcommittee. Its entire job is to go look for the quick wins within the Transit 2.0 study. And Javier's there too. Cesar, I can't, I'm too many. So Cesar's there too. So we've got DCTA is way overrepresented. Let's go that route. So we're doing pretty well there. The first meeting went by. I think we've got at least some good ground rules. People are looking for the low hanging wins from the 2.0 transit study. There are a lot of different recommendations. Some of them really not relevant to the DFW Metroplex, but they were just throwing everything at the wall that was a possibility as to what a transit system, next generation transit system for the region might look like, and what kinds of tools and sources of revenue and legislative changes and board changes and all of that, different modalities. So that board will be continuing to have meetings and figure out, what are the things that we can do as a cog as the Council of Governments to really help direct and reinforce transit. I think part of that will be policies at the Council of Governments level that do not undercut transit. Today, there are lots of folks that come to the COG for funding for different transportation projects that are not transit cities. And while they absolutely should be responded to, those of us who have invested in transit might look to have a little bit of extra weight put on our requests because we are doing things to help mitigate the congestion and other issues that are coming up within the region, whereas some of these other municipalities may not be looking at that. So this may be another lever to help encourage them to join or be part of a transit agency in some format or another. So that's the goal for that. I'm glad we're having those conversations. And I think it'll come with some really good outcomes for the transit agency and for the COG to be able to help grow the region and maybe head off some of the congestion that we're staring at. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it's all day, every day now. It's not, I mean, it's not LA quality yet, but it's pretty significant. So that's that side. The other conversation that I am involved in is with DART and their member cities. And so they are having conversations about governance, about equity, and about service, and trying to get some agreement. There are 7 cities that signed a letter expressing their intent or interest in having a withdrawal election. They have to get that all structured by November. And so the COG and DART and its cities, as well as the North Texas Commission, are putting together a series of conversations around that. The first one was on governance. There was a lot of agreement on that one. The next one is going to be a little bit more difficult, but gets into the finance and service. It's hard to have those conversations independent of each other, since anything you do on the finance side is going to impact the service side. So the goal of this is to maybe have an actionable between DART and its member cities by November 1 that maybe will prevent or at least get some agreement that these cities will not hold an election to withdraw from DART, which I think would be devastating to the region, to all of the transit agencies. But by the same token, you know, they do give every 6 years as part of their bylaws the ability to have a withdrawal election, should the city want to call it. So that's the conversation on that side. It's not great, but it's also, you know, probably one of those things where everybody needs to do a deep dive, look at what their expectations are, and get some new alignment. I think sometimes the level of that level of insight and conversation is necessary, because agencies do, you know, they grow to a point where maybe they're not serving what their original goals were, or they were missing things. So I see some parallels between what we did in 2019 with this board and where DART is right now. So I'm hopeful, but it is definitely a big hill. And that's what I have for what's going on. Any other additions to item 6? Western days. Friday and Saturday. If y'all want to come, let us know.
Getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah, well,
That's community.
I'm trying. What else?
Other items of community interest.
I mean, we can do that. I mean, there's information reports in the packet we can set by, so everybody's got those. So yeah, community interest, let's go.
Arts and Jazz is coming up September 3rd through 5th at Quakertown Park. It's one of our biggest events of the year. Parking can be challenging. Everybody should use transit, take the train.
Awesome.
Those dates again?
September 3rd through 5th, Friday through Sunday.
October.
I'm sorry, yes, October, thank you. October 3rd through 5th.
I'm all for pre-planning. We do have a proposed board meeting calendar in our packets, so if you have any questions on that, let us know. We also have our safety service and ridership reports that are in our packets. That includes UNT ridership, which I think is important because we're seeing some needle movement on that side. Understand that I think our overall ridership is down, but is directly impacted by UNT and some of their enrollment challenges. Whereas our non-UNT ridership is actually up by, I think, 7%.
Yes, sir.
So year over year. So I think that that's a great story. But I think it's also critically important that we understand how our partner, our biggest partner impacts our ridership. Just so everybody has clarity on that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just put on everybody's radar, we'll be reaching out to look at an alternative date for the December board meeting. We'd scheduled it for the 11th of December, and that day is also a Regional Transportation Council meeting. And so we're looking at December the 10th. So Keisha will be out and be in touch with you all about moving that date so we can avoid that RTC conflicts.
Any other future agenda items that anybody would like to see on the?
Would like to ask, not a future agenda item, but maybe a more of a request. It's been maybe 3-4 years since we got polo shirts for the board. That might be something.
And the general counsel. And the general.
I thought you liked the embroidered like cardigan vest or something.
Well, we will work on that, sir.
Yeah, get you a puffer vest. Awesome. Anything else on the agenda? Anything for closed session? I think we do have one thing for closed session. So pursuant to Texas Government Section 551.0415, Board of Directors may report. Oh, that's not community interest. Sorry, man, I am having a moment. Good thing I'm moving on. Yeah. We're going to convene the executive session for the Board of Directors and close pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074 personnel to deliberate duties and evaluation of the Chief Executive Officer, fiscal year 2025 annual performance evaluation. All right, we are going to be back into regular session. Board, are there any actions to be taken?
Yes, I move to increase the base salary of the CEO by 5% effective October 1st, 2025.
And I would like to heartily second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. As there is no further action to be taken on today's agenda, we stand adjourned.